Sounds good.
Yeah.
Good, okay, lovely. Thank you for coming along this morning, guys, really appreciate it. Do you want to just sort of start, first of all, tell us a little bit about Snap Analytics and a little bit about your background and how you came to form the business and a little bit of your journey.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we actually started talking about the company in the pub several years ago, and I think we identified an opportunity to help organisations get more value from data. I think having worked for big corporates over the years, we've seen many challenges, and I think some of the new technologies, new methodologies and ways of thinking about data have really changed the game and enabled organisations to get more value from data, and also it's really democratised data. So as well as the big organisations with their huge, expensive, monolithic ERP systems, I think smaller organisations can now start to leverage some of the modern technologies and really start to get value and use data more effectively. So I think there's been some real developments that have really leveled the playing field. Over the last few years.
Yeah, I think that's the key, right? So we've historically worked on large enterprise-wide programs and kind of working with on-premise solutions, and we've seen kind of the huge amounts of problems and kind of seen the very common BI challenges. But actually, lots of the kind of new technologies which we're working with at the moment, they actually overcome lots of those challenges that we've seen historically. So that's kind of, I suppose, where we've seen an opportunity, which is, actually there are these new solutions which can give companies a way to be a lot more agile with their analytics solutions, and there's also a lot of people who kind of stuck in that old mindset of not willing to try something new and kind of move over to the new solutions. So that's kind of, I suppose, where we see Snap Analytics coming in, really making a difference.
Absolutely, and I think one of the other big opportunities is really to start looking at building data teams who are good at building relationships and being a bridge between technology and the business. I think historically projects and many projects have failed because the business and the technology guys haven't been able to communicate effectively. So being able to communicate with clarity and simplify some of those challenges is really important. I think we often forget the people aspects in this. So this is something that Caroline Carruthers and Peter Jackson talk about in the Chief Data Officer Playbook, that a massive part of any data role is really about building relationships with the business and understanding the business.
I think that's just actually a really interesting topic, because I guess historically lots of people have been kind of afraid of data, certainly in certain functions like kind of, I guess, more marketing and sales kind of stuff. But now everyone is using data so much more. Everyone has iPhones. Everyone's tracking data all of the time. Actually, I think it's going to get a lot easier for projects to work because people are going to start to get more data driven. And I suppose that's really helping to join those teams together is really what hopefully will make analytics projects more successful.
It feels like to me, having worked in the recruitment industry in tech for such a long time, it feels like when I first started in recruitment, IT was still this team of people that sat in a basement, or they're in a porter cabin somewhere, and they kind of were just, well, they're the IT guys, just leave them to it. And actually, over the last 20 years, it's come back to productivity of a business improvement, business change. IT and tech has massively changed that, and all of a sudden they're like, well, actually we provide a heck of a lot of value here. And I think that IT has grown up massively in 20 years and come on so far. And it feels like data is a little bit like, not quite that extreme, but it's now like, oh, we can do that with data. Because tech has come on so much now. As you said, it's not just the big companies, it's not just, we've got to have an Oracle database to do anything meaningful with data, or we have to have a really on-premise big SQL Server database. So actually, do you know what? Actually, we can do a lot now, and it's not going to cost us that much actually, because we can do it on demand. and it's just really easy to get hold of the data, whereas years ago it was really, really hard.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get that feeling.
Absolutely,
Right.
yeah. And there's this big debate going on in organisations at the moment as to who owns data, because historically there's almost been the assumption that IT, well, they're the guys that own the data, and I think now that finance teams and HR teams are saying, hang on a minute, there's a huge amount of value in this data and it's a real corporate asset, they're starting to take more ownership. And so what we're seeing is more more people being embedded with those technical skills in the business rather than in IT teams.
And that's probably, I guess, only going to increase as kind of managed services, so like cloud providers and stuff, take ownership of actually managing the servers and the actual kind of solution aspect. That's probably going to just play into the hands of that even more, with finance teams owning the data and actually the IT side being managed by cloud providers with really a smaller IT interference.
And I think that follows on from the point around democratization, I guess.
Yeah.
So not only does the cloud and some of the self-service BI tools democratize and enable smaller businesses to do more, they actually enable business functions to take more ownership and to be able to do more for themselves. There'll always be a place for IT and data governance and security and all of these things still remain really, really important. And obviously disaster recovery and all those kind of things that maybe the guys that sit in the business may not always think about. But I do think that the business is starting to get more autonomy, and that's a really powerful development for companies.
Absolutely, and what we've talked about there is modern data technology. We're talking about modern data platform. It's better, it's faster, it's cheaper. So for you then, when you're looking at all these different cloud vendors, we were both at Big Data London a few weeks ago, and it's just huge. There's so many different vendors, so many different platforms, so many different tools and managed service providers. Where does, if you're a small business, maybe you employ, say small business, let's say you employ between 100 and 500 staff.
Yeah.
Where do you start? What do you do?
So that's a really good question. For me, I think you start with how can we make our company more efficient. We're Snap Analytics, right? So our focus is on analytics, but actually, if you look at the other potential that exists in data, there's tools now like Microsoft Flow where you can automate your processes, and this is something we're doing internally. How can we automate our processes? Things like the expenses. You now take a photo of your receipt and it automatically goes into your accounting system. Previously, that whole process was a real headache, and we've both been victims of that. I'm sure you have as well. And so how can you simplify and automate those processes? How can you avoid those scenarios where you've got someone who's spending most of their time copying and pasting data between spreadsheets? Because I think probably all seen a lot of that in our time as well. So I think the sort of simple automation is a really good place to start. And obviously, some of the self-service BI tools now really accessible. You've got tools like Google Data Studio, Power BI, which are really affordable for a smaller or mid-sized company, and actually you can do some really powerful things with those tools. So I would start by looking at those kind of tools which aren't going to cost the earth, not necessarily tools that would be suitable always for big enterprises, but actually for small businesses and medium-sized enterprises, they can deliver huge value for really reasonable cost.
So simple automation, keeping it simple.
So I think there's also a thing, right, that so it's very easy just to focus on the technology side, and certainly Big Data London does that kind of thing where there's so many different vendors that are saying, look, our product's really cool, you should come and just use our product and all this stuff. But actually what you should really be looking for is, okay, what outcomes do we need to get out of this? So as Dave says, a small business, probably the start is the operational side. You're trying to get all your processes set up, you're trying to make things efficient, so you don't spend your time actually having to waste time on that. You can focus on building the business. But then there's also the kind of strategic side. So, okay, what data do we need to actually help us drive our business, help us win more business? And then that's the kind of side where you start looking, okay, how do we actually track our data? How do we store it? How do we start reporting on it? And that will only increase as you kind of evolve in maturity. But it's your focus on that side, and then once you've worked out what it is you want to deliver, then you can assess, I suppose, the vendors and work out, we could probably maybe Snowflake would be best for this, or Power BI for our reporting, that kind of stuff.
I was asked a similar question by a small business yesterday, actually. Where do we begin? Because it was a conversation around finance and KPIs and metrics. And I said, there are so many. Where do we start? And I think it's a really good point, Tom, around firstly start with what are you trying to achieve as a business? What are your objectives? If it's brand awareness, you might want to look at social media likes and shares. If it's you're all about the profit, then you can start to map your finance KPIs into those financial objectives. So our objective is to make £1 million in profit. How are we going to do it? How are we going to measure it? And what are the things that what is the data that can help to influence that? And you may come back to the more brand awareness we create. Actually, that also feeds into profitability, and you can start to track and measure that. So,
and in terms of agile modeling, we've got this written down here. I mean, I know agile is a way of developing in short sprints. It's come about through how we now use apps on our phone, and it's a constant release of new features. And that's come from, I remember Prince methodology, SSADM, now we've got Agile, or Waterfall, now Agile. So what's Agile modeling then?
Yeah, so in lots of ways it's taking that same concept which is applied to kind of Agile projects, but how do you apply that to something which is so governed and strict as a big data warehouse, which historically takes a very long time to, once you've kind of built it, if you're making changes, it takes a very long time to adapt to the data warehouse. And it's trying to find a way to make sure that the time that you actually get the requirements, deliver it, that those requirements are still valid, and trying to speed up that process. So a big part of it is kind of getting the data in raw form, making sure that the users have access to it straight away. Often when people kind of hear about BI requirements, it's too fuzzy, they don't really understand it. You deliver what they asked for originally, it's wrong, it's incorrect. So the whole agile data modeling concept is kind of basically about trying to quicken that process, get people hands-on with the data, and actually starting to work with it to make sure what you build is actually correct. And kind of these cloud kind of tools and technologies help with that, because they help to speed up the entire process, and everything becomes a lot more agile. You can actually make sure that what you deliver is pretty much what the business wants. I think that's the key part of it, really.
So one of the comments from I don't know if you saw the talk by Rob Thomas from IBM. Big data. So he said two really interesting things that stuck out for me. The first was the big barrier to AI adoption at scale is the collection and organisation of information. Was the first one, and the second thing he said is ensure that you build for change, and it's something that historically, as Tom alluded to, in big data warehouses, they become very difficult to change over time. So agile modeling is about exactly that. It's about building for change. So not building data models where all your data is heavily sort of dependent on each entity, actually almost decoupling it. So we've got our products, we've got our markets, we've got our sales, and actually these entities almost behave independently, but if we want to link them, so I think we're looking at data modeling at the moment, and again, it's a really good way of looking at the world, created by a guy called Dan Linstead. And again, I think there's a lot of traction with Data Vault at the moment. because actually historic ways of modelling data have made these data warehouses very difficult to change. Now, in a world of agile, and agile BI, and just the nature of business now, that businesses are constantly changing, constantly changing their markets, the way they want to report their finances.
Yeah.
You have to have systems that are exactly what Rob was saying. They have to be built for change.
Yeah.
So.
You were talking earlier when we were coming downstairs about a client that you were trying to do some reporting for, and the data wasn't quite right. And you said, I quote me if I'm wrong, you said, there's no point in us doing anything because the data's just not right.
Yeah.
And what you said earlier, Tom, was about the agile approach to it. Let's just get something out there. It's quite interesting because there's two school of thoughts there. There's that, right, let's not do anything until it's all perfect.
Yeah.
Then we can load it into a central repository, we can clean it, and then we can report on it.
Yeah.
And actually one of the talks at Big Data London from British American Tobacco was actually like, do you know what? And it's this agile methodology maybe, and it's just, let's try something, break it, and then let's just fix it again. And if we go quick enough, it's okay.
Yeah.
And I guess it goes against that data scientist mentality of, no, it has to be perfect before we put it in. And the guy from BAT was saying, well, do you know what, actually, let's just get it in and we'll report on it, and it'll look wrong, but we'll let the users loose on it, and they'll see themselves why it's wrong and how it's wrong. They'll see the and actually it will get them thinking more like a data analyst or a data scientist in the first place. So if you get your users bought into, this is why you need to do it this way in a structured fashion, because this is what's going to happen at the end of it.
Yeah.
Is that kind of where we're at now? It's kind of like, okay, well, let's just let them get on with it a little bit. And
in some ways, I think that's the case. If you have like a 6-month release and you wait for everything to be right and you build lots of different things, put it in, then when you find out things are wrong 6 months down the line, you've built 5 or 6 things that are all related to each other, then you need to change something. It's so much more difficult. Whereas this approach of actually get the users to understand the data, start understanding what fields are available, understanding how the data kind of joins together, and then you can find out something's wrong after 2 or 3 weeks, fix it, and then it's right for everything else. That is kind of the much more modern approach to it. But obviously, certain things like with finances, balance sheets, P&Ls, when you get to that level, things have to be correct for the markets. But certainly during development, I think.
So it really depends on the use case. I think 9 times out of 10, I think you're right. Get the data out there and ensure that you've got that feedback loop. Data, it might be a data quality dashboard. It's quite a simple thing to build, but it's often something that's missing in projects. Is so that I'm a business user, I want to see is my data good? Is it just 90% accurate? Maybe 90% accurate is fine, but at least I know there's 10% of my data that's incorrect. Great. But if it's statutory reporting, it's got to be correct, right? Something that I've seen done previously, and something that we're building into our framework is tiers of criticality of that data. If that certain entities or attributes have to be 100% accurate, kind of statutory reporting stuff. That's going to be in your gold tier. You might have a silver and a bronze tier, which actually, if that data is 90% accurate, it's still going to give us tremendous value. But again, make sure you know the data that's not accurate. So build that feedback loop to the business. And the other thing is build transparency for the business. Is the other thing that I often see doesn't happen in projects is the end user is none the wiser. Is my data good? Is it bad? I don't really know what the numbers I'm looking at are telling me. If you've got that dashboard and that transparency, it actually starts to drive behaviour. So good example, did some work for a large automotive manufacturer, and it was a PMO dashboard. Right, so project managers historically weren't updating their project status, their RAG status, quite a common scenario. this particular client had a huge IT spend across the business, and the senior management didn't have visibility of that IT spend. Now we built a dashboard which gave the management visibility of brag statuses, but also who wasn't updating. When you're spending millions on an IT project, but that status hasn't been updated for 3 months. Once the senior leadership know about it, that actually drives behaviours.
Yeah.
So although the data was poor, and previously the solution or the problem statement was we can't build the dashboard because the data's bad. What we did is we built the dashboard, and the data actually got better because of the dashboard, and because of the visibility. Yeah.
But I think also, so like what we say kind of SAP Analytics is we focus on connecting data technology and teams. And I think having, as Dave was saying, there's regular feedback loops, actually getting it out in 2 or 3 weeks. You have to then speak to the business, they have to then speak to the team who are actually developing it.
Yeah.
You make the changes, so that communication line is then open, and people are just human at the end of the day, but if you can start connecting those teams, making them much more intertwined, things are going to go a lot more smoothly than it would do. So that's why I think really the kind of agile modeling approach works better from an organisational perspective. I think it actually just makes sure that you get the data faster, you get it more reliable, kind of works for everyone.
Yeah.
And I think that connecting teams piece, it's about honesty. People want to know what their problems are, and I think the guys that sit in the dark room will often almost try and mask those issues. Yeah, we built this great system, everything's great, right? And then it goes out, and the business sort of, the business know their data. They typically, they have a pretty good feel for where things are at. And they want that transparency, they want that visibility of where the pain points, where the issues are, where the data's not accurate. So I think that connecting teams piece is all about building your system so that the business have that data quality dashboard and that visibility. Secondly, building in simplicity in the form of data catalogs. If I'm a business user, I might not know what a certain attribute or a certain field even means, and there's often there's so many acronyms in business now, right? So one of my slides we talk about A, B, and AC rates, right? And believe it or not, the AB is the actual,
right,
and the AC is the standard. You might think it'd be the other way around. So new people coming into that business may not know what that even what that even means, or get it the wrong way around. So building data catalogs and building transparency in those systems so that teams understand what they're looking at and where their issues are, I think is really, really important.
When it comes to recruiting for a team, where should a company start? At what level should they start at, do you think?
Yeah, I think this is something we were talking about the other day, because we were kind of thinking about this as a blog idea, as in kind of what key people do you need in your team to get started on kind of an analytics project. And I suppose kind of the most important, I guess, would be like the solution architect, in terms of starting on day one, working out, okay, what is it we're looking to deliver, what parts of the jigsaw do we need to actually make this thing work end to end, along with, I guess, the business analyst.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the business analyst has to be somebody that understands data. They have to be that bridge. Yeah. So not only do they need, it certainly helps if they have a really good feel for the business domain, whether it be finance, whether it be HR, sales and marketing. If they've worked in that space, they'll understand the common challenges, but they'll also understand the data team. So, the solution architect, I almost see the business analyst as the bridge between the solution architect and it might be your finance director, is saying, this is what we're trying to achieve as a business. This is what we would like to measure, and then the business analyst will almost sort of relay that to your architect, and the architect will say, okay, this is what you're trying to do, and this is strategically where you'd like to go. Here's a solution that would help you get there.
Yeah, and I suppose the key, and you probably find this maybe more in terms of the kind of roles and stuff you get in at the moment, but I think more than ever, people who are on the technical side, especially at the beginning, need to have a very strong functional understanding. We have to be able to work together with business teams, especially early on in the project, to really make sure that all the processes are set up, you understand the data, you understand exactly what you're building, and likewise the other way around, the business analyst or whoever it is from the business with that knowledge needs to have an understanding of the data. What is it we're trying to build? How do we kind of translate that? So I think in the beginnings of the project, those skills, it's almost very kind of similar between the business analyst who needs to have a strong data understanding and the kind of solution architect who needs to have a strong business understanding.
Yeah.
I suppose you maybe see it with some of the roles that you place in now with.
We do, yeah. But we see this, I guess, challenge where you've got a small company. They can't necessarily afford to take on a business analyst and a solution architect and a data analyst and a data scientist.
Yeah.
So they've got, a senior person there who will recruit a data scientist and a data analyst. And I think we've talked about how much time spent does a data scientist spend on cleaning up data. And I get this feeling a little bit like, a really like Picasso, you wouldn't get him just sort of painting a wall, would you?
No.
And maybe I'm making data science a little bit more grandiose than they actually are. I don't know, but still, it's about making sure people are doing the right thing in their skill set. And I guess if you've got somebody, a data scientist in, there's no point in getting them to do the heavy lifting when you can have a data engineer or a data analyst to do that for you.
Exactly. I think that's the key. If you have systems in place, and as we were talking about earlier, kind of automated processes, and lots of this is coming in now for kind of making manual tasks such as data cleaning. There's artificial intelligence which is starting to be used to automatically clean the data, prep the data. Actually, the more that you can automate that stuff and let the data scientists get on with their job, it's kind of the same with anything, right? If you've got like a manager, you don't want them taking all the notes for meetings and doing all that stuff, wasting time on the low value tasks. It's the same concept, I suppose.
Absolutely, and I think the data scientist role is a really good example. It's that stat that 80% spend their time cleansing and combining data, and again it's this point that what's his name, Robert Thomas from IBM made, that the biggest challenge to that scalable AI is collecting and organising data. Now, is your data scientist who's got a heavy statistical background and super smart and are those guys, should they be spending 80% of their time doing that, or should they be analysing and creating value from that data for the business? But for the smaller companies, it's a challenge, right? Because you've got all of these roles, and the blog that we're going to post shortly, people will go, oh, I need all of those roles. But actually, so something that Peter Jackson and Caroline Carruthers talk about in their Chief Data Officer playbook, they talk about just making sure the people you do hire, they use the term data cheerleaders. So people who've got curiosity to learn more about the business and about data and people who innovate, but people who are going to go out and build the case for why data is important and how it can add value in that business. So I would say, if you can't afford all of those resources, maybe get someone that can build Power BI reports and learn a little bit of DAX code to just get people excited and somebody that's passionate and enthusiastic about it. And I think once you can start to illustrate value from doing those more basic tasks, and even using, like I say, Microsoft Flows to automate things. It doesn't even need to be Flows, right? But a tool like that. Existing BI tools have got capabilities to create alerts and do certain things, and there's lots of ways you can simplify. So, but I think regardless of who it is from a recruitment perspective, I just say make sure those people are passionate and make sure they're good communicators. I think that's really, really key.
Do you see yourself as data scientists yourself?
I wish I could give myself a grandiose term like data scientist. I think I wouldn't call myself a data scientist. My partner actually is a data scientist, so I know that if she's watching me, there's no way I can
Get away with it.
I'm not going to get away with it, I'll get called out. But I think, so I've classed myself as kind of a data engineer and kind of more working, work stream lead kind of roles on projects. But I think the key is for companies to start thinking about how, or making sure they don't run before they can walk.
Yeah.
So they need to get the data in place to actually be able to get the most value out of AI. So this is about building foundations, building a scalable data warehouse, somewhere where you can actually store your data, things are correctly, basics like master data, making sure your customers, your products, you know what they are, you don't have it in lots of different systems, lots of different places. And that's, I suppose, where I see us as being, where we come in, is kind of, okay, we'll build you that data foundation, we'll give you the place where you can actually go in, you can start accessing your data, you start understanding your data, and then as you mature, you'll have your reports, you'll build a proper reporting solution. Then you'll probably look towards the data scientists, where you then say, okay, we know that we are making this much profit, we know that we're making this many sales. How do we find the variables that maybe we've not seen before? We know we're tracking them, but we don't know that this affects sales in this way. That's where then you start to bring those data scientists in, and I suppose that's how the two link together really.
So I see Snap Analytics and where we come in. It's about that collecting and organising of information. So what that does, it enables your scalable AI. It enables your analysts who are out in the business trying to make sense of data as well. And I think historically there's been this almost divide. We're going to go and build a data lake and do some data science, or we're going to get Power BI and just build some reports without, because collecting and organising information, it's not sexy, right? Whereas if you've got a dashboard, you're building AI, we're doing AI, it's great. I think what often gets forgotten is actually the collecting and organising of information is really, really critical if you want to do self-service analytics or AI at scale. And the scale thing is important because yes, you can build some reports, you can do it off of Excel, but is that going to scale over billions of rows of data? Is it going to have longevity? Is it going to be flexible? So if you build lots of logic in Power BI reports, over time it gets to a point where someone asks you for a change and it's going to take you a week to do it because you built so much logic in the wrong layer.
And actually, fundamentally, if you've got kind of three people telling you different sales numbers for the same thing, then you get yourselves into a real mess and end up spending so much time trying to work that out. And that's often what happens, right? Someone goes away and they build their Excel because they don't have the platform to be able to get the data themselves. Someone else goes, builds a Power BI report, does the same thing, but with lots of different logic. And then you get into a place where actually your business reporting starts to be a mess. I think that's the point, right? Get the foundation layer in place. Everyone knows the core data they're working from is correct, it's validated, there's kind of a clear lineage, you can trace the data, it's auditable, and then you can start doing your AI and your data science and stuff on top of that.
So the message is get the basics right, get the foundation in place, make sure that your data's in a reasonably good format and it's good quality. And do the simple things right, basically.
Basically, it's not a new concept.
No, it's not.
That's why
it's
maybe we're preaching the same old stuff, but actually it's still important. Right? There's still big businesses that are not using a common data platform. There's so much more data being created that the need for this is still probably more important than ever. And I think what you were saying about kind of small companies, it's the same with big companies, right? Hiring data scientists to try and tackle a particular problem, but actually, they're trying to cheat the system. They're trying to get to the later step, but they waste the time. Trying to clean the data, bring the data together, all of that stuff. Just get the basics.
And I think, although it might be the same old stuff, I think the problem gets bigger, but the solution gets easier. So what I mean by that is the problem of having to join data from lots of different sources. You've now got lots of external sources and APIs. You've got on-premise systems. You've got SaaS solutions. You've got the likes of Salesforce and Workday now. Historically, you might have had all your data in a big monolithic ERP system, I think even Gartner say the days of the monolithic ERP system are over. What does that mean? It means the data's in more places now, not fewer. So you need a platform where you can join it together more than ever. The reason I think the solution, in a sense, gets easier. So the technical solutions is that the cloud enables me to create a massively scalable data warehouse in seconds, maybe minutes at a push. I can literally fire up this service and load billions of rows of data. I can scale that up and down in seconds as I would like. I can pay for what I use. What that does is it gives you back time. So the 3 months or 6 months that you would have spent, procuring servers and scaling them, deciding how much, load you need and disk space, that kind of goes away now, because actually I can fire up a data warehouse, I can start to do a POC, and I know that, whether I've got 100 rows or 50 million rows, it's going to scale quite quickly. So I can take back that time, and I can start to invest it in looking at my master data, looking at my data quality, and building those relationships with the business.
Yeah.
So rather than the techies all sat in a room doing stuff and people all scratching their heads going, I don't know what these guys are doing. We were doing stuff, we were working busily away, look at, indexing tables, things like that, you don't have to do anymore, performance tuning to try and make sure that the report runs within 10 seconds.
Incorrectly and all that stuff.
All of that overhead now starts to go away with tools like Snowflake, and what that means is, it doesn't mean there's going to be mass redundancies, right, necessarily. It means you can take back that time and invest it in the things that really, really add value. And I think there's this stat, 85% of, up to 85% of big data projects fail. But if you could take back that time spent doing technical stuff that you don't have to do anymore, and actually invest it in data quality, in master data.
Work out the data that you need.
Building the data catalogue so the business understand what's in there. I think we can deliver much, much better solutions, and we can deliver them quicker because you haven't got that same technical overhead.
Would you agree that, and this is something I hear a lot of, in our last video podcast that we did with MediaCom in Leeds, Neil Charles, the head of data there, he said everyone comes, every day, every month, he gets approached by a company that says, we've got the silver bullet. We've got the thing that you'll just load everything into and it'll all be good. And for him, it's around measuring the performance of media spend. And every now and again, somebody comes along and says, we're going to do this and no matter how many times you've seen all of these products, nobody's really ever given him anything that replaces old-fashioned econometric modelling and actually using a few of these tools to make life a little bit easier, but bolting things on. And he was saying, nowadays, and especially at Big Data London, it feels like when you see that graph and that image of all of those different products all together, it feels like that data is this thing where everything fits with each other. Not quite like Lego, but you're almost there. So would you agree that there isn't one sort of single platform? There's no silver bullet. It is a case of there's lots and lots of things out there, and you just need to create a team that can put those things together, like Lego, to create you a decent solution.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. I think one solution that might be right for one company might not be right for another company. Right, a company that uses Microsoft for all of its stuff, and actually having a Microsoft system that nicely integrates is key. But I think the key with any kind of data platform, it needs to be able to integrate with lots of different other technologies in kind of like an ecosystem. I think that's more and more, that's becoming so important. The new data sources that you see from different places, making sure that you can use APIs and get all of that data, integrate with lots of different kinds of systems. I think those flexible tools will be the ones that have the most longevity in a business. I think tools that make it difficult to join up with data, then they're not going to get as much traction.
What tools do you guys, you talked about Snowflake a few times, what other, if you were to kind of, from that big list of products and platforms and tools and different vendors, who would you say are standout ones that we should be looking out for over the next few years?
So it's a good question because the picture is enormous, as you
Yeah.
saw from Big Data London, and had a conversation with a guy I've worked with previously recently, and he said, where do I start? Because there's such a vast kind of array of tools now, and it's really exciting because so many of those tools have got so much potential. There is no one size fits all. I was recently talking to an energy company, and you know, they said we're not interested in, you know, a data warehouse. We give our business autonomy. We're you know, they're one of the unicorns, startup, and they say we use Kafka topics. So if finance want to build a data warehouse, or you know, use Databricks to, you know, build a solution, or Apache Spark, or whatever else they want to use, or SQL Server, they can do what they like as long as they publish that data to a Kafka topic, which means it can be shared. So I can then effectively subscribe to that, and receive that feed of data. And I thought, you know, that again, you know, I was like, yeah, that's brilliant. You know, that's a great solution. So that, you know, there is no one size fits all. And again, they're a company that has, you know, lots of technical capability. So those kind of organisations can maybe use those more open source tools. Apache Spark is fantastic, and Databricks has effectively combined Spark and Kafka, so you can do your data science. You can build your reports on top of Spark, so you can connect in from the likes of Power BI.
Really, the speed, isn't it? Like the multiple parallel processing. I'm trying to get too technical, but basically just being able to load huge data sets in fractions of the time. So yeah, I think things like Databricks, the processing side of things, are really good. And yeah, obviously we talked about Snowflake, but things like Microsoft Azure, I think, you know, there was a lot of talk about that at Big Data London. I see that in practice at my current client, and again, that works for them. They're a Microsoft company, they've got a lot of Microsoft products, and you can integrate it in quite a lot of things as well. So I think that's key. And then I guess, because we always talk about combine, store and visualize, so kind of a Databricks kind of stuff for the combine, but also tools like Fivetran, Tillion. Store is obviously like Snowflake, Azure, but then visualize, obviously it's things that I think most people have heard of. So Power BI is great, it's affordable, Tableau as well. They're so easy to use. So I think kind of those are the tools which I suppose we hear the most about.
And Looker, as just the big Google acquisition of Looker. The interesting thing about Looker again is that there's no client, and they only work with very fast databases. So you almost remove this additional layer, which is the cube, which we did have a cube on our logo previously. But we took it out because actually, with you know, Databricks, with Snowflake, with SQL Data Warehouse, you can actually start to go, well, actually, do we need cubes anymore? Because actually we can directly connect these tools to very fast databases. And what Looker have done quite cleverly, I think, is said, do you know what, we're not going to talk to all your legacy, you know, old data warehouses. We're only going to talk to the new cloud, very fast databases, and we're going to be a service. We're going to be, you know, so again, you fire up, you know, you subscribe to Looker effectively, and I've been interested in Looker for quite a while, and then I saw the Google acquisition, and I thought, yeah, you know, there's something here as well. So they're a really interesting one to watch moving forward as well. And just looping back to your question, Sam, on, you know, I'm a small company, where do I start? If you get a data engineer that knows Python and can play around with you know, whether it's Looker or Power BI or Tableau, you know, if you get someone that can do those two things, you know, they can literally fire up a tool like Databricks, and they can write Python, SQL, and they can probably do some really amazing things. So I think it's getting that kind of person who's sort of a little bit multi-talented, someone who's really inquisitive and can learn, and like I say, the architect that goes and stands up all these systems. In a small business, you don't really need that guy anymore, because actually, if I'm quite technically competent and I know a bit of coding, I can actually just fire up a service and do some really, really cool stuff very quickly. So I
Yeah.
think they're the companies for me that will win out, is the ones that have adopted that kind of subscription model, and the ones that have solved the performance problems, and the ones that just offer that simplicity,
Yeah.
that take away the pain of all of the, indexing and partitioning and having to scale and size servers.
Yeah.
It feels like there's no limitations anymore. But I guess it's just about what are the business needs, what's the tech platform, what's our tech stack right now,
Yeah.
and if you're starting from scratch, then the world's your oyster a little bit.
Yeah, I certainly think the limitations that there were previously have been massively reduced. I think kind of if you had 100 limitations before, that's now kind of just down to about 10 or so.
Yeah.
You still need to get your data, join it. You still need the people to model it correctly and all of that stuff. Those limitations don't go away, but yeah, in terms of having to look after the databases and everything else like that, there is Microsoft or Google or Amazon, whoever it is, they have a lot more speciality in dealing with that. So if you can outsource it and just say, actually, we only use cloud providers, it takes so much of the pain away. The simplicity, as you were saying, Dave, I mean, that's probably the one thing we do focus on. Whatever we do, we try and make it simple. I think
Absolutely.
being a cloud analytics company is kind of the way in which you can start to progress to that.
And I think, coming back to what you do, Sam, which is recruitment, I think one of the big limitations, particularly in the UK, is that talent pool.
Yeah.
I think, people are, there's lots of degrees now. You see, there's Aston University, I think Manchester have got the data science degree. It's definitely becoming more prevalent, but I think getting talent and getting really good communicators that maybe know a little bit of coding and understand how business works and where businesses are trying to get to. I think if you can find that talent, then you can get massive value from the assets that you've got in terms of your data.
I was going to ask you about kind of somebody coming out of school and looking at whether I go into data, whether I go into IT. What advice would you give to a student maybe looking to get into data? Where should they start, and what kind of things should they be doing at home, maybe outside of just a normal curriculum in any kind of college or uni?
Yeah, I think probably the key thing is obviously just get hands-on. I think the more that you can understand general concepts rather than stick yourself to a particular technology, then that's probably the key to having a kind of longer, I guess, more successful career.
Yeah.
Technologies will come and go. I mean, we'll probably see that even with some of the technologies that we're talking about today. 10 years' time, there'll be a whole new set of technologies, but actually the understanding of basic data concepts, basic modeling concepts, that won't change.
Yeah.
We still need that. So that would be kind of my advice, is kind of play around with different tools, kind of see how the same tool or different tools do the same kind of things,
Yeah.
and make sure that you kind of really understand the core data modeling concepts behind it. That would be, I suppose, my cool bit of advice.
It's a really interesting question, and personally I think about what the future looks like for my own kids,
Yeah.
and how I can advise them on what kind of things they might want to explore. And I think I don't know if you've come across Noah Yuval Harari, but he's a really interesting guy who talks a lot about how AI is going to transform the future, and he's quite popular in Silicon Valley, I think.
Right.
But he's got an amazing perspective. So yeah, he's done a couple of TED talks. I think there's a big question over whether there'll be mass job losses. So you think I always think of the Amazon warehouse, right?
Yeah.
Maybe even 5 years ago, that would have been people going around picking stock off the shelves. Now it's almost entirely automated. There's robots doing those manual tasks. I think, if I was advising the next generation, I'd certainly be steering them towards, learn some coding. But you're right, Tom, in 10 years it might not be Python. But if you understand those concepts, it's someone's still got to code the robots, right?
Yeah, of course.
I think machine learning is really, really interesting. So understanding machine learning and how that works. I do think machine learning will become democratized, so that you or I could build our own models. I think some of the tools are starting to go that way already. You've got to be a bit careful with that one, but there are already, you can almost start to sort of, drag and drop. This is what I want the machine to do, and it will go and start to teach itself things. But I think coding those technologies, there'll always be the need for people that can understand those.
And I mean, I think we've kind of spoken about it quite a lot today, but having the functional skills to go with that, right? So all of the new technology that we're getting, I read an interesting article about augmentation, how essentially it's just going to help us do our jobs a lot better. But if you think about, we're talking about data scientists, okay, so maybe they used to be extremely technical and they needed to go and code everything. Actually, there's so much automation now that they are needing to become data storytellers. They need to understand the business. They need to actually provide insight as opposed to just describing exactly what's happening. So I think make sure that you don't, in your first jobs and things, don't try and just buckle down and focus on the technology. Understand what it's trying to achieve. Make sure you speak to the business, understand what they're looking to get from it, and I think you'll end up kind of having a lot more insight.
Yeah, we've not really, we've kind of touched on visualization tools, and it's something that comes up a lot when we're talking to clients that they decide to adopt or go with a visualization platform, whether it be Power BI or Tableau or Click, and they all have their valid reasons for going down that route. But in your opinion, what would you say your favourite tool is? And because visualization, storytelling, everyone talks about data storytelling, and of course doing all that back-end data analysis and then the reporting, it's really, really important that the business kind of goes, that moment, and that's what you get from the visualization, I guess, and the dashboarding. So which one in your opinion is the best and why?
Yeah, I think.
Or your favourite and why? Let's not say the best.
Favourites. I think Tableau has to be up there. It is market leader, and it's market leader for a reason. It's had lots of functionality, and it always tends to be at the forefront. But I mean, I see, so on my project at the moment, we're using Power BI a lot, and actually the amount of functionality which is constantly being released every week, every couple of weeks, Power BI is actually becoming a really, really good tool, and it's kind of getting up to the point where it's starting to match with Tableau. So for me, I see the most use in those tools. But
I think I'm going to abstain from this one. I think there's had some very. I think people get quite sort of tribal about which tool to use in organisations, and actually, I think if you've got that foundation, and particularly in the large organisations, you're going to see people using Tableau. Almost certainly, you're going to see people using Power BI, MicroStrategy, business objects. And I think it's all around the skills. If you've got guys who are fantastic at business objects and they've been using it for 10 years and it's delivering exactly what they want, then that enables your business. If you then say, right, somebody senior comes along and says, no, we're not going to use that anymore, we're going to use Tableau, albeit the tool may look nicer, actually that may inhibit your business because you haven't got the right skills to use those tools. I think there's so many great tools out there, and Microsoft have done a great job kind of bringing Power BI, developing that and bringing that to market. But I think, like I say, there's Looker, there's Click.
So you're staying right on the fence there.
I think they're all really, really good tools. And I think
they're all really good.
Whatever. But I think whatever your business is comfortable with and gets value. I think, like I say, as long as that foundation is solid, then I think you're going to get massive value from any of those tools.
Yeah, I think as you say, like they all have their perks. They all have like something that they might do and the other one doesn't, or whatever. But fundamentally, getting the insight out of that data, you can do it in all of the tools, whichever is the one that works for you. The people in your organisation understand the best. Basically, whatever allows you to get the understanding and the meaning of your data best is what you should choose.
And just as a good example, one of my clients is using MicroStrategy, that offers commentary capability, which the other tools don't do. again, so that there's some good, really good functionality in there that they wouldn't have if they'd have gone with a Power BI or a Tableau. So it all depends on what you're trying to achieve. So that commentary allows them to annotate their financial reports, which is really useful. So I think it really depends what you're trying to achieve, and I think having a combination of those in your business is absolutely fine.
Yeah, as long as they all access the same kind of data and you have that data platform, then you can use kind of pretty much any kind of visualization tool.
And I think this debate gets more airtime than it
deserves.
Really warrants, because what we're not talking about is master data. What we're not talking about is data security. Let's face it, the reporting and the self-service analytics, so that's the sexy bit. That's the bit where people go, wow, it's the wow factor. But there's so much underneath that we're missing.
Yeah, it's like the classic BI iceberg, isn't it? You have like the little top which the business can see, and it's the front end reports and everything, but it's the massive bit underneath the surface which is is the hard work, and that's where you really need to get it right, your data platform.
In data, what do we see has changed in your world over the last, say, 5-10 years?
Yeah, I think probably one of the biggest ones, right, is that we're talking about data scientists now.
Yeah.
And we didn't talk about data scientists 10 years ago. They were kind of statisticians, and all that stuff. Essentially, it's the same role, but again, you kind of have those changing titles. I think there's new roles being created by data, because you quite often talk about like the chief data officer, that kind of thing. Don't you?
Absolutely, I think the increase in the number of chief data officers in organisations, I did see a stat that 90% of organisations will have a chief data officer by 2020.
Wow.
We're not far away from there now, so we'll be interested to see how accurate that was. But I think what that shows is that organisations are realising the power of data and what an asset it is to their organisation.
Yeah.
And if you look at the companies that have been massively successful, the likes of Amazon and Google, they're massively data rich.
Yeah.
And even I talked earlier a bit about automotive. If you look at the potential for data in automotive, connected cars, even the driverless cars, the amount of data that they will generate, data is absolutely critical to particularly those kind of organisations. And actually, whether you're a retail business or a consumer goods business, data gives companies the opportunities to drive massive efficiencies in their companies. Finance teams, HR teams, and I think that chief data officer role is a really, really key one, because what they do is they give visibility of data across functions rather than just within individual functions, because one of the big challenges is the silos of data across big companies. When companies make acquisitions, you can end up with 20, 30, probably more data warehouses across these businesses, spitting out different numbers, I think, as Tom alluded to earlier. And I think having somebody in the C-suite saying, right, these are our objectives, coming straight from the CEO, and this is how we're going to use data to enable those objectives, and even to create new business models, connected car, understanding how people are driving and selling information to insurers. You can actually start to then monetize data and build whole new revenue streams from data as well. So I think that chief data officer role, someone who pulls everything together, that's a data cheerleader, and really understands business and technology, is an absolutely key role that we'll see more and more of those types of roles. They might not be called chief data officer, they might be called head of data analytics, or head of data, or head of BI, but ultimately in organisations, the people that can join those functions together and create synergies and help to articulate the value to the business at a very strategic level, I think those people are going to be very, very valuable.
Yeah, I think building that data-driven culture, you need the people with the right skills. So
You do,
can understand the data. I suppose this must be what you see from a kind of a recruitment perspective, is actually companies more and more say, we probably need people with the data skills so we can actually start to leverage all of this data that we have.
Absolutely. I think we're constantly being asked all the time, how much do you actually know about data as a recruiter?
Yeah.
And that's really, really crucial to get it right when it comes to us trying to find people. Understanding the difference between a data analyst and a data engineer.
Yeah.
Somebody who's got very strong cloud experience, who's not just a BI developer in a data warehouse on-premise kind of situation, but really, really understands cloud.
Yeah.
And knows the importance of getting that data right. That's a big thing that I'm hearing a lot right now.
And I think that understanding of cloud is really important. One of the aspects. So let's say I just get a data scientist and data engineer, and I set them loose in the cloud, and they load 10 billion rows or whatever. Right, those costs can start to spiral very quickly. So although we say it's better, faster, it's cheaper, it's not always cheaper if you don't optimize what you're building for the cloud.
Of course.
Yeah. So if you've got a massive data warehouse and massive processing, and you don't know how to optimize your costs, you can end up still spending millions on that solution accidentally. And I've heard some use cases, I'm not going to mention the technology, where one query has cost, I think it was £40,000 to run. So I think, that they're the kind of horror stories. So I think if you've got somebody that can understand how you can avoid those kind of scenarios, how you can optimize costs and performance, and even mitigating the risk of so multi-cloud is something you may have heard, multi-cloud strategies. So if I put everything in one cloud with one cloud vendor, what if the costs skyrocket? What if I constrain myself to one vendor? And what a lot of companies are using is tools like Docker, containerizing, open source tools within Docker, so Apache Spark. So actually, if my Azure costs go through the roof and Google's cheaper, I can actually just flip across. Or if the company, the guy from IT says we're not using Azure anymore, we're going to use Google Cloud Platform, then those solutions can switch between the three clouds. So I think either using vendors that are multi-cloud, or adopting that open source Dockerized kind of strategy is important. I think those roles, coming back to the roles, having people that understand cloud and having seen maybe those kind of mistakes, is really useful. So you get your Oracle developer in on a project like that, he may not understand those things, and he may go crazy and rack up a very big bill very quickly.
Oh, I bet, yeah. You talked about containerization and Docker there, and so that leads on to kind of DevOps, which we now know is, again, a new thing. It wasn't around 10 years ago. And somebody at Big Data London was talking about data ops, and I heard it from 4 or 5 people, that data ops. So that's now a thing. But what is data ops then?
So I kind of agile data ops, open source. We talked a lot about Python. So it is working in that more. For me, it's working in that more sort of agile fashion, and your sort of data engineering space. I think there's almost 2 movements here, and they're kind of contradictory, but in a way they complement each other. You've got your DevOps, and I talked about the energy company and the Kafka. They're very much a data ops type business, so they'll get some guys who know and understand code. You've also got your less technical people or companies, where the organisation is maybe less data driven but wants to move into that space. And things like data warehouse automation, it's the drag and drop. Those kind of companies may be better suited to a more less data ops environment, and more the kind of self-service, really making things simple, because you can still get tremendous power from a lot of these data warehouse automation technologies, for example. So there is almost, it's almost going in 2 different directions, and I don't think one is going to win out over the other. I think it depends on what you're trying to achieve. If it's the heavy data science use case, you might get a team of data scientists and data engineers who know Python, Scala to build something that's really quite codey, but they can probably do it very quickly.
Yeah.
And you've got the right skills in the business to manage and organize your data in that data ops, DevOps type fashion. Whereas other organisations won't necessarily be suited to that way of working. So,
all right. For us as recruiters, I always say to people that work for me when they first start in recruitment, and they concentrate on a particular vertical market to really understand the technologies, understand the market, and the best thing to do is to go out and speak to candidates and learn about those different technologies. I've got 2 people starting work for us very soon in New Year that are going to be placing people in the US in data.
Yeah.
What advice would you give a new recruiter, never done recruitment before? They're going to start trying to place people in not only a completely new market to them, but also the US, this huge market. What advice would you give me to give them, or what advice would you give them?
For me, it would be all about understanding the value that data can bring to those companies. So I'd almost start with those use cases.
Okay.
What are the use cases for AI in that particular vertical? What are other organisations doing? So as a recruiter, I'd say you don't necessarily need to understand be in the weeds and understand the solutions from a technical perspective. But I think definitely understanding how data can bring value to those businesses and what kind of use cases are out there is really important.
I think kind of my advice would be don't stick too narrow.
Okay.
So I think kind of I've certainly been guilty of it in the past, actually, kind of being a developer side of it. If you stick to just a couple of technologies and just focus all your attention on that, then you miss what's happening elsewhere in the wider landscape. I think have an open mind as to different roles, different opportunities, different technologies which are emerging, and I think keep your finger on the pulse of what is the latest new innovative technologies, which might be small now, but actually in 2 years' time, that could be where you end up getting a lot of work, a lot of big projects needing those kind of skills. So I think keeping your finger on the pulse, but also having a wide view of all the technologies out there would be the key advice. Even I don't think it even matters if it's US or UK. Really, kind of data and analytics, it's the same worldwide.
Absolutely.
So I read a good stat this morning that the AI global market for AI will be worth around 16 trillion by 2030, which is bigger than Google, Facebook, Amazon put together, right? So I think the opportunity in AI is a really, really interesting one that over the next 5 to 10 years will really start to take off. I think at the moment, around 58% of companies are doing something with AI, but I don't think across enterprises generally companies are always succeeding. I think there's a lot of tinkering around the edges. But if companies can start to succeed building scalable AI solutions, and you can tap into that massive market, I think finding people with those skills and really understanding machine learning, data science, I think there's clearly a massive opportunity there. So again, tapping into what are those use cases, what are people doing, and how it can add value. If you can have that value conversation rather than you need this technical guy, here he is. It's more here's what this person is going to be able to bring to you. And again, it's got to be someone that's good at building relationships. I think if you can combine the techie with a great communicator, then I think that's where the massive value is.
Well, we're trying to our approach to our business model as a recruitment company is always about people first. It's not about filling jobs. We're about actually placing people into jobs. So it's about building a relationship with the candidate, understanding what they're looking for from a tech point of view, culture, obviously financial, qualifying all that information, and then taking that profile, that person, to the market and saying, here we go, I've got this diamond candidate, and he or she we're going to place in the next week to 6 weeks. Are you interested? And it being a hand-holding exercise for the candidate. So it's not about trying to get lots of jobs and fill those jobs. It's providing a service to the candidate as well as delivering a recruitment project for a company, and it's getting that balance right, I think, for us.
I suppose probably one of the biggest things is not necessarily just waiting for roles to land. You can build your network, and I mean we see it in projects. There are certain people who are kind of the early adopters, the people who are constantly looking for the next greatest thing, not just happy to keep sitting doing what they do. If you can find those people and make sure you have a good network of those quality people who are always striving for the latest innovation, then I think that's where when you do get a role and whatever, then you have the people ready to fill them, because these are the guys who are really always going to be kind of at the top of the market. And I think that's what we see on projects. There are people who are happy to keep doing what they've always done, and then there are those that want to keep
like you guys.
I try and put myself in that bracket, but
we just spoke for what, over an hour? So listen, we really enjoy it, and I think just seeing the value that it can bring is amazing. And I remember, so I started off working in HR analytics about 15 years ago, over 15 years ago. I'm that old. And whenever I used to sort of go, guys, look, all this data, there's so much value, and people would sort of go, oh, we just want a headcount report, leave me alone. And now, even in the HR space, so people are starting to predict who's going to leave their business. People have realised that staff turnover is expensive, and there was an IBM Watson use case where they were able to predict, I think it was with about 70% accuracy, if someone was going to leave your business that year. And they could then go, right, how can we retain that talent? And it's just really interesting to see how things have shifted. How we got talking, Sam, is also saw one of your videos previously, and I think you're in a really good space that you focus on data, massive growth potential, and I think you get it as a recruiter. So as a candidate, or even as a business, I'd want to be talking to somebody who really understands the domain, and I think the fact that we're even talking now, and you're sort of trying to really understand that space, I think gives you a real edge, and I think is great for candidates, that they can talk to somebody who actually says, you guys actually know what I'm talking about. Because I certainly found in the past, talking to recruiters with my own sort of contract roles and permanent roles, that they don't really understand what I'm about or what I do, and whereas actually I see that you guys are really into it, and it's nice to find people who get as excited about it as we do.
Well, listen, it comes across massively how passionate you are about data, and that's infectious as well. And I can only imagine that when you get in front of clients to talk to them about their challenges, that really comes across. So, equally, I think you guys are in a really good space. I think there's a real market for somebody that can almost sit in the middle of these big vendors and help these organisations where they don't need somebody full-time, they don't need to recruit a team of people just yet, but they need some help. They need to be able to give them some advice and guidance on setting in place their foundations, their platforms, what tools work, what tools could work for them, and steering them in the right direction. Because there's a lot of companies, a lot of organisations, big and small, that really struggle when it comes to their data journey and where to start. So I think there's a really good market for you guys, certainly.
Absolutely, and I think in that mid-market where those clients can't afford the big four, and their high day rates, I think they're the organisations that I think can really benefit from talking to a company like us. We can help them on their journey and help them to get more value from their data, hopefully. So it's a very exciting time.
Good, good. Well, listen, hopefully you both have a great Christmas and New Year.
And so
Here's to 2020,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
really thanks for coming along and spending some time with us here in Manchester. I really do appreciate it. I hope you got some good value from it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So
It's been an absolute pleasure. Yeah.
Great
Thank you,
stuff.
Sam.
Lovely. Good to
Thanks
see
a
you.
lot, Sam.
Good to see you, David.
And you.
All right. Right. Well.